Hello, everyone. My guest today is Ryan Denehy. He's the CEO and founder of Electric AI. Ryan has founded 3 companies and has made successful exits in the past. He's also an investor and hands-on advisor for companies such as Stadium Goods, Blackbird, and Anchor worldwide. He has a broad experience in all aspects of revenue strategy through direct sales, channel sales, BD, and M&A, and a proven ability to develop a vision, build a team, and simply get a job done. So, first of all, Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
I'm psyched to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you have had great success as an entrepreneur in the past and also currently, and you're redefining the world of IT support. So, Ryan, tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, great question. I think it sort of goes back to starting my entrepreneurial journey when I was in high school. I think the big turning point was getting my first venture backed tech company off the ground, and so I was lucky enough to co-found 2 companies with the same person, Rudd Davis, and so he kind of like plucked me from obscurity when I was like 19, and he said, "Hey, I'm raising money to build this extreme sports media network, and I need some help. Do you want to join me?" And so that was when was that? That was in 2007. So that was almost 13 years ago, and it was a unique experience. I mean, he was 4 or 5 years older than me, and I think saw that I could add a lot of value and was willing to basically do anything to kind of help him get this first company off the ground. And you know, 10 years and 2 successful exits later, it was a hell of a run that we had together. And so a lot of that kind of those 2 companies and what I learned, working with him kind of set me up to eventually, go out on my own and start Electric.
Got it. So it's an amazing journey. So, what does Electric AI do, and how do you make money?
Pretty simple concept. So we provide outsourced IT support for companies that don't have a full IT department. And so, typically this is companies that are large enough where they have an IT budget. So you're paying for software, you're buying computers for your employees, but you're small enough that you don't have a full IT department of 10, 15, 20 people, right? So usually this is companies that are between call it 25 to 30 full-time employees and like under 500 full-time employees. So prior to us starting this company, if you wanted to outsource some or all of your IT support, you had to work with a local consultant, an independent managed service provider. The service was often slow and inconsistent and very expensive. And so what we realized with companies all over the world moving to the cloud and moving to a SaaS based IT infrastructure, you could automate most of the stuff that goes into managing and supporting someone's IT needs, particularly for these smaller businesses. And if you build software to deliver it in a more automated fashion, you can provide significantly better service, faster, higher quality, more consistent, at a much lower cost than if you were to try to deliver that same quality of service with humans. So it's kind of just a textbook example of how a software solution being aimed at a traditionally services based problem could produce a solution for a customer that's 10x better than what existed. So we've been doing this for 3 years. We've been very successful so far, but still pretty early on in the journey. And I guess to answer your second question, how do we make money? It's a monthly subscription based on the number of
Got it.
employees you have.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have founded multiple companies, also invested in some companies. So, what are some of the best resources that have helped you along the way to become successful?
First and foremost is other entrepreneurs, and really anyone else who's at the top of their craft. I think the best part about being a CEO specifically is that tens of thousands of people have done this job before, right?
Mhm.
Some have done it really well, and many have done it really poorly. But the bottom line is all the answers or most of the answers that you need to be a successful CEO are out there. So I've always kind of viewed my job as a leader is just to find the answers and piece them together into my own set of solutions that work for whatever situation I'm in. And so I think that's really like the core job of anyone leading a company is, I mean, obviously there's don't run out of money and hire great people and all that, but like really the job is just find the right answers, because they're all out there. And so again,
Got it.
the resources for me have constantly my gut reaction or sort of like my knee jerk response to a problem or needing the answer to something is just pick up the phone and talk to someone who's dealt with this thing
Who
before.
has done it?
Yep.
Got it. So I guess one resource then is people. What are other resources? Do you have one or two more?
Well, people generally tends to be like that. That's where probably the vast majority of any of the good ideas I come up with, A, typically aren't mine. They're someone else's. B, it's coming from someone who knows what they're talking about, who frequently is not me. So that's the vast majority of it. Although, the other thing is I read a fair amount of books. I think it just depends on like what I'm trying to learn at that moment. So like after a while, I'll get sick of reading business books, so I might
Mm.
switch to other things. But I think in the world we live in today, where people are kind of hooked on social media or binge watching TV shows on Netflix, like the reality is you can like just pick up a book and read it, because that is where you can ingest so much relevant information quickly. And
Yeah,
I don't see that changing.
totally agree. Totally agree. Who are three people except your family you have been most influential to you during your
Yeah, well, so I mentioned the first one, Rudd. My co-founder for my last two companies, and I think that the net of that is every young entrepreneur or business person, I think, really needs to find someone who will take them under their wing and kind of basically help put them on. Rudd was definitely that person for me. The And I think that's different than a mentor. Like what I'm really talking about is kind of like a mentor on steroids. Like you actually gotta
journey?
have someone who's like legitimately gonna like fight tooth and nail and have your back and like and help put you in situations where you can really excel. And these days I think loyalty is kind of a lost art, right? Like I just see way too many young people who are way too motivated by you know changing jobs every 18 months because they can make a little bit more money or get a little bit of a bump in title going somewhere else. Like, if you're lucky enough to work for somebody who is truly excellent and sees value in what you're doing, like the $20,000 more you might make by just like jumping ship and going to another company is pales in comparison to the opportunities you unlock by staying loyal to someone who really gets you and is willing to do a lot for you. So that was a big takeaway. I would say one other person that immediately comes to mind who I think played an important role in my entrepreneurial journey, be Mike Brown from Bowery Capital. So I didn't know any VCs in New York when I moved back here in 2016. And I'd also never been a CEO before. I had never founded a company by myself before. And my idea for electric was a pretty hairy concept. It wasn't just a traditional B2B SaaS company. We had to actually build a tech-enabled services arm of the business to actually acquire all the data that we needed in order to set up our automation roadmap. It was like a very complicated business. And so Mike was again the only VC I knew in New York at the time, but he just happened to totally understand the business and the opportunity and happened to know me well enough to like trust that I would figure this out. And so he put me in business. He gave me a term sheet with no deck, no team, no prototype. I wasn't even sure I'd be a good CEO or if I even wanted to be a CEO. And he just said, nope, I totally get it. Like, you got this. Like, here's the term sheet. Here's the money. Like, let's do this.
How much did
So,
you raise for XRI?
that first round or seed round was 2 million.
Got it. Okay, cool. So do you think, that there was a common pattern skill during your journey, like one skill that specifically made you successful or really helped you along the journey?
Sales. It would be probably the biggest one. Sales. Yeah. I mean, because I got my start. Every business that I'd run, I had always been in charge of figuring out sales and marketing, right? So like, even actually my very first company that I started, I was producing mountain biking documentaries. So I produced a DVD that had all these professional mountain bikers in it. This is when I was in high school, and I somehow figured out how to sell 4,000 copies of this DVD in bike shops all
Holy
over the
shit.
world, right? So now I was lucky. I found a bicycle parts manufacturer called Lizard Skins out in Utah, who had their own distribution facility, their own warehouse, all of that. And so I ended up cutting a deal with them, and they actually sold it on my behalf, and they did a phenomenal job doing that. But like, my backup plan, if I couldn't get a company like theirs to distribute it, was I was just going to move all the stuff out of my parents' garage, set up some desks and some phones, and I had a list of every bike shop in America. And my friends and I, after school, were going to cold call all 3,500 bike shops in America until we sold however many copies of this DVD we could sell. So like, I was fully prepared to do whatever it took to sell this. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that, but like, what I realized early on was like, the difference between an idea and a business often is just distribution, right? And so, you know, and that was sort of what I realized early on. Like, there were a lot of other guys trying to make extreme sports videos, and the ones who were successful and got sponsors and were well known and written about in the magazines were the ones who had distribution. And the ones who didn't have distribution, they'd sell them out of the trunk of their car, and they'd maybe sell a couple hundred of them, but they never materialized into real businesses. And so, I think that was, being a non-technical person, that was always my focus from the very first business I started. Was like, the business is the distribution. Like, you have to have a good product, you have to know your customer, but fundamentally, without distribution, there is no company.
Yeah. So you say sales was basically your core strength or your core skill, or is your core skill that has really helped you during the
I
journey?
would say, I would say it was, right. I would say it was up until about a year ago, maybe a year and
What's
a
it
half
now?
ago. My focus is 110% on leading the company and managing a phenomenal team of executives to go do the things that we need to accomplish as a company. So where I spend most of my time now is really thinking about constantly iterating on our strategy, setting and communicating our strategy to the board, to new potential investors, to our executive team, to our customers, right? And constantly honing that, and then doing everything that I can to get every ounce of incremental performance out of the leaders we have at this company. And when it works well, this is the best job in the world, and when it doesn't work well, this is the worst job in the world. Fortunately, right now, this is the best job in the world. So
That's good. So where do you see, or where do you think this industry will go, first of all, in the next 5 years and then in the next 30 years?
it's 30 years. That's above my pay grade to try to answer that. Look, I think the next 5 years, and not just speaking for my industry, the sort of IT support business, but if you take any mundane services industry where you have a large number of local service providers providing a needed, necessary service, all of those industries at some point are going to be reinvented with technology, where technology is going to create either more favorable economics or a far better user experience, for the end customer, right? And you're seeing this now in a lot of these kind of sleepy back office, type of businesses, right? Like, HR was the first vertical to really see software, reinvent it. Um, Now, if you're a small company and you need to get payroll and benefits going for your employees, you're not likely to hire an HR consultant and call the insurance companies directly and manually set up payroll. You're most likely to go online, and you're gonna sign up for a service like JustWorks or Namely or Zenefits or Gusto, and the software is going to power 90% of the stuff that you need to do until you get to a certain size. And, you're seeing the same thing happen in accounting. More and more often now, people aren't hiring like a local bookkeeper to run their books. They're going to companies like Pilot or BotKeeper and Dinero, who provide a software centric approach and a semi-automated approach to running your books, and it's a way better experience. And so IT is the same way, right? Like all of this stuff that is done very inefficiently and not well by humans will slowly be replaced by software. So the humans in that industry can focus on the things that they're uniquely good at, and the software can do all the stuff that the humans are bad at.
Yeah. So are you focusing on that with your company? Is there something, are you gonna do a shift or invent something new?
Well, I mean, that's our whole reason for being, is that, the vast majority of the day-to-day IT management tasks that a human currently does are not tasks that are done particularly well by a human and not particularly scalable by a human. So, the reason we've, raised all this money and think we have such a big opportunity in front of us is we're building software to automate most of the IT management tasks so that a human doesn't have to do them.
Okay, that's great. Awesome. So let's wrap up here with the Fantastic Four. Question number one, is there a CEO that you're following or studying right now?
Yeah, I would say so I have two answers to that. One, I had the pleasure of meeting John Donahoe a few weeks ago. He's up until about a month ago was the CEO of ServiceNow, which is one of the best performing publicly traded software companies in the market right now. He's actually now transitioning to become the CEO of Nike, and just sort of widely known as one of the stronger leaders in business. And I think he was, I was lucky enough to sit down with him for about an hour, and I think when I walked out of the meeting, I thought to myself, like, that's a guy that has a really good head on his shoulders, who's a like thoughtful, measured leader, and clearly just like knows how to get the job done. And I just thought to myself, like, I think I can do that. I think I could be a very effective CEO like him at some
Yeah.
point. The CEO of a large public company, and I'd like that large public company to be electric, right? So, I think he's so now I've just, now after meeting him, I've tried to read up as much about, what he's done in the past and sort of his leadership style. The other one is Phil Jackson. So not a CEO necessarily, but Phil Jackson was the coach of the Chicago Bulls in the mid 90s, and led them to a number of championships. And so, he was the coach of the Bulls when the team was Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all these legendary names. And I think what makes him different from other coaches was he grew up in South Dakota near a Sioux Indian reservation. And so like a lot of his leadership philosophies and how he coached the team are really rooted in like Native American and Far East spiritualism, right? Which like sounds a little bit crazy, but a lot of the stuff that leaders of companies are talking about now around things like mindfulness and meditation and like being nice to people, like basic stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, that was how he ran the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, right? Which was like crazy. Like most people don't know that like if you walked into the Chicago Bulls locker room in the 1990s, there were Sioux Indian totem poles like in the locker room, right? Like, and
Crazy.
and he was encouraging the players to meditate, and you know what I mean. Like anyone that could tame Dennis Rodman clearly had a way of leading people, right?
Yeah.
I've been reading his autobiography right now. It's called 11 Rings: The Soul of Success, and so I think like that side of leadership, just like the real soft skills around like understanding yourself and understanding other people is so critical. Like the days of kind of like the loud wannabe, in your face kind of CEO, I think are long gone. And I think what people really respect is someone who's a rational human being who
Yeah,
cares.
no, totally agree with you. So let's jump to the next question. Do you have any routines that you strictly follow on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I have a lot. Uh, and I think that's because I think for
Give
most of
us
my 20s,
your most important two most
I'll give you
important
the most
ones.
important ones, and I'll preface it by saying that um, all of this is sort of in direct response to the fact that I'm 33 now. It's in direct response to the fact that like for most of my 20s, I did not take care of myself at all, right? And so, I lived in New York for a bit, I lived in LA for a bit, I lived in San Francisco. Achieved some success. Partying on weekends, whatever. Didn't take care of myself at all. And then, I think anyone you get older, you realize how important it is. And so,
Yeah.
almost everything that I do now is in support of wanting to feel good, wanting to manage my stress, wanting to have a lot of energy. Um, and so the first one is I try to wake up at the same time every day, even on weekends.
What time is
And
it?
so I used to wake up at 5, but what I found was that wasn't like I would have to go to sleep so early in order to wake up at 5 and still get enough sleep that it wasn't useful. So usually it's around like 6:30. Um, so I try to wake up at the same time every day because one, it makes it easier to get out of bed in the morning. So, for example, if you sleep till 9 or 10 on the weekend
Yeah.
and then try to get up at 6 a.m. on Monday, even if you slept for 8 hours the night before, you'll still be really tired. And that's because your body, even for 2 days, was used to waking up at 9. So you get up at 6, your body is still going to be producing melatonin until 9 a.m. So no matter what you do, you're going to be tired.
Mm.
So if
Yeah.
you wake up at the same time every day, you fall asleep faster at night and you get up faster in the morning and have more energy. The second thing is I work out the second I get out of bed, and I work out 7 days a week now. I don't do the same thing every day. Sometimes it's cardio, sometimes it's weights. But hard exercise in the morning boosts my energy for the day, reduces stress. All good things, right? The second thing is like I'll drink a fair amount of caffeine in the morning. Like I'll drink
Hmm.
some, pre-workout before I work out. I might have like a coffee protein shake after I work out, but then I'm done for the day
Oh
because
wow.
I used to pound coffee throughout the day, and what I found was like the drinking coffee, drinking 4, 5, 6 cups of coffee throughout the day creates these like mood swings and anxiety and periods of high energy, then periods of low energy, and like all things that are not good, right? And so what I started to figure out is that like all these little habits are self reinforcing. Like if you get more sleep at night and then you work out in the morning, you don't really need a lot of caffeine during the day.
Yeah.
And then if you
Yeah,
stop
that's
drinking
great.
all that caffeine, then you sleep better, right? And so when you start to roll all these things together, like I have significantly more energy now that I'm not drinking caffeine during the day than when I did, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's
Got
true.
it.
And then I think like the last thing, also kind of in terms of keeping my energy up, is I take either vitamin B6 or vitamin B12 when I'm eating lunch
Mm.
because vitamin B converts food to energy. So if you think about it, like your brain is one of the largest consumers of energy in your body, even though it doesn't take up much space. But when you eat, all of the blood and oxygen that was normally going to your brain goes to your stomach, which is why you feel like an idiot after you eat a big meal, and you feel tired. So
Yeah.
I try to eat like a light meal at lunch, but if you take vitamin B, it converts it much more. It makes your body convert the food into energy much faster, so that you don't feel sluggish after you eat, and then you have more
Got
energy in the
it.
afternoon. So
Okay. Last question. What do you wish you would have started when you were 20 years old?
I wish I would have started when I was 20. Oh man. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of regrets.
But I
But
mean, that's
what,
good.
yeah, but no, so what I would say is when I was in middle school and high school, I was obsessed with skateboarding. I was obsessed with skiing. I was on my high school ski team. I was obsessed with mountain biking. Was obsessed with surfing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And fast forward to now, I'm 33, and I love all those things. I'm into cars. I like driving race cars. Like all this other
Mhm.
stuff that like things that I'm passionate about that have nothing to do with my job and nothing to do directly with my personal life, right? But if I look
Got it.
back at like the entire time in my 20s, I didn't do any of that stuff, right? And so like, basically, by the time I finished college, any hobby that I had, any passion that I had that was not work related fell by the wayside. And so I remember when I moved back to New York, thinking about the fact that like, here I am, and if like someone asked me like how I actually spend my weekends, it was like going to a bar with my friends, right? It's like there's nothing wrong with that, but I started to think about like, man, I used to have all these things that I was so passionate about that like gave me this gratification and this sort of release from all these other parts of my life that like I just stopped doing. And so
Yeah.
I was fortunate to rediscover a lot of those things in my early 30s, and now it's like those are fulfilling important parts of my life. But if I could turn the clock back, what I would say is like, we're not on this planet very long, and it's just hyper important that you have things that you're passionate about that aren't connected to your
Yeah.
job or necessarily your existing personal life, and like don't let those things go, because you'll wake up and realize that a lot of time has passed and there are a lot of just fun, gratifying things you could have been doing that you weren't doing.
Yeah. No, totally agree with this. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.